Bomb the heck out of the cartels in Mexico. That's the growing consensus of Republicans as they seek to tackle America's fentanyl crisis. All that and more now on Graph's Grievances. With over 14,000 pounds of fentanyl seized at the US Mexico border last year, leading Republicans are rallying behind a novel, drastic tactic to stop the flow of the deadly synthetic opioids up north. Two House Republicans introducing a joint resolution to give the president the military authority to combat cartels smuggling fentanyl into the U.S. In the Senate, Republicans Lindsey Graham and John Kennedy announcing their own legislation that would give the military the authority to go after cartels, quote, wherever they exist. These once fringe ideas were reportedly championed in private by former President Donald Trump when he was in the White House. Former Defense Secretary Mark Esper, writing in his memoir that Trump inquired about launching missiles into Mexico to destroy drug labs and wipe out the cartels. And as crazy as it might sound for America to wage war against the drug cartels without the permission of the Mexican government, this idea is becoming a mainstream policy priority within the GOP. So why is that, and how should Democrats respond? So first of all, fentanyl and synthetic opioids are a big problem in America. The Drug Enforcement Administration has called fentanyl, quote, the single deadliest drug threat our nation has ever encountered. And according to the CDC, the rate of opioid deaths involving fentanyl and other synthetic opioids was more than 18 times higher in 2020 than in 2013. And in the most recent year for which the CDC has compiled data, 2021, over 70,000 Americans died as a result of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids. So a lot of people are dying. Many of these people live in Republican areas or vote Republican, and Republicans are trying to address an issue that is really resonant with their voters. According to a recent Axios Ipsos poll, Republicans see fentanyl and other opioids as the biggest threat to America's public health. Higher than guns, of course, and higher than obesity. But interesting to note is that Democrats also see fentanyl and other opioids as a very big issue. Democrats rank fentanyl as the second greatest threat to America's public health. And you can be sure that Republicans are getting ready and have already started to use the fentanyl crisis in America against President Biden and Democrats as we gear up for the 2024 election. One of the leading proponents of tackling the fentanyl crisis and using it as a weapon against Democrats has in fact been far-right Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she has specifically talked about how Democrats are focused on Ukraine and saving the Ukrainian people instead of focusing on the deaths of Americans caused by fentanyl. Now, of course, that's not true. The Democrats can do two things at once. America can do two things at once. It can do multiple things at once. We can focus on addressing our fentanyl crisis and helping Ukraine defeat Russia's invasion. But it is notable that Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to put a wedge between voters and say, Democrats are not focusing on issues that matter at home and are only focused abroad, and she sees the most salient issue to point to is the fentanyl crisis, which truly is a problem because of the number of drugs that are flowing across the US-Mexico border. And in fact, some of President Biden's own cabinet officials have admitted in testimony on Capitol Hill that there's much more that the Mexican government could be doing to attack the flow of drugs across the border. Attorney General Merrick Garland saying that Mexico was not doing anywhere close to enough and definitely could do more if they wanted to attack fentanyl trafficking. And of course, it's important to remember that what some of these Republicans are proposing, such as the legislation that's been in, or some of the legislation being proposed to tackle America's fentanyl crisis, is about targeting the cartels in Mexico with or without the permission necessarily of the Mexican government. And of course, that's taking away the sovereignty of one of our closest allies. And even if we don't believe that they're doing everything they can to tackle this crisis, is that really the right approach? Certainly, it's not going to get Mexico on board with other initiatives that we want their help with, such as immigration. And Mexico's president, Lope Obrador, said, quote, "We're not going to allow any foreign governments to intervene, and much less foreign armed forces to intervene in our territory." So the Mexican government is really putting a kibosh on any sort of plans by the U.S. to sort of necessarily go rogue and target cartels within their state. It takes away their sovereignty. The key here for Democrats is probably to show that they care about this issue, the fentanyl crisis that's killing thousands of Americans and only increasing to be a problem, and also trying to figure out a way to address it by working with our peers in Mexico, such as strengthening U.S. and Mexico military-to-military cooperation and providing help to increase law enforcement in Mexico to stop the flow of these drugs. So let me know what you think and what solutions you'd propose, and thank you for watching Graf's Grievances.